everybody. This is Vince Miller. Thank you so much for joining me for this devotional. We're in Acts chapter 19. I'm going to be reading verses 35 through 41. Here's what it says. And when the town clerk had quieted the crowd, he said, "Men of Ephesus, who is there who does not know that the city of Ephesians is temple to the keeper of the great Artemis, and of the sacred stone that fell from the sky? Seeing then that these things cannot be denied, you ought to quiet yourself and do nothing rash. For you have brought these men here who are neither sacrilegious nor blasphemers of our goddess. If therefore Demetrius and the craftsmen with him have a complaint against anyone, the courts are open and there are proconsuls. Let them bring charges against one another. But if you seek anything further, it shall be settled in the regular assembly. For we really are in danger of being charged with rioting today, since there is no cause that we can give to justify this commotion." And when he had said these things, he dismissed the assembly. So as the city executive shows up, he does a number of things here, 3 specifically. First, he tells the audience to act consistently with their beliefs. He proposes that if Artemis is who they say she is, which is already widely accepted, she can defend herself. She doesn't need a crowd to cheer or defend her, right? Second, he infers that Demetrius is the sole reason for the public eruption. And he states that Demetrius's issues are not an issue with Artemis or general belief in Artemis, but a simple business issue. And he implores them to bring their business issues to the city official, who's open for business and ready to discuss the matter at hand. Third, and the primary point he suggests, is that they're all in danger of rioting if they don't settle down. And if you're a student of history, you will remember that just 10 years before this moment in Rome, there was one of the most notable riots of all time. It was the riot that essentially ushered the Roman Republic into becoming the Roman Empire. It was stirred by the assassination of the Roman general Julius Caesar, who attempted to establish himself as the ruler of Rome. And as history states, the representative government that lasted for over 500 years, led by the Senate, conspired to kill him and stabbed him repeatedly on the Senate floor. This resulted in something the Senate did not expect, and began the turn of the Republic into becoming an empire. Now, why is all this important? Well, because Demetrius's point is that Paul and his gospel were a danger to Ephesus. On the other hand, the city executive points out something different, that Paul and his companions were of no threat to them. Instead, he illustrates that they're the ones who are the threat. They're in danger of becoming seen as an insurrection by the government of the Roman Empire, who is now led by one of Rome's most tyrannical emperors, Nero. So what can we learn? I really believe people who are led by mass hysteria and human fears end up doing, some irrational things, don't they? We've seen this more and more in recent times. People driven by fears of the economy or business or inflation or markets or government or media or decrees and even diseases do irrational things. In this situation, one person, Demetrius, uses a human fear to incite insurrection against people adversely affecting his business. In the next instance, another person, the city clerk, uses human fear to incite submission to the empire. And people in masses just follow along where their fears lead them. But to some degree, aren't we all led by some human fear? I want you to imagine the Apostle Paul standing in Ephesus at this moment in history. He's a man who watched Demetrius incite fear in the streets. He's a man who watched a mob march to the theater, a man who watched his 2 friends being dragged onto the theater floor, a man who listened to the rising chants of the crowd for a couple of hours. And then I want you to consider this question. Do you think Paul feared one of these things? Really, did he fear one of these things? And of course, we know he didn't. We read this yesterday, but in verse 31, here's what it says. And even some of the Asiarchs, who were friends of Paul's, sent to him and were urging him not to venture into the theater. And why? Well, because Paul wanted to go into the theater. And so we discover that Paul had no fear of this moment. He was willing to walk right out onto the theater floor. And why? Because he feared something greater than man. He feared God. He feared God more than the economy and government and media messaging and even life itself. And in his fear of God, God provided a different solution that didn't require him to walk out onto the theater floor. So today, what do you fear? Do you fear man or do you fear God? And if you really fear God, then what theater floor do you need to walk out onto? Fellas, thanks for joining me for this devotional day. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it challenged you. If it did, share it with someone you know. Hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you right back here again tomorrow.